The notification arrived at 2:17 a.m., a small vibration against the wooden nightstand that felt louder than it was. I was awake already, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old fan rattle like it was tired of spinning. When I saw your name glow on the screen, my first thought was that my mind had finally started playing tricks on me. I had trained myself for months not to imagine that name lighting up my phone again. I didn't touch it right away. I let the screen dim, then light up again when another vibration followed. A second message. My chest tightened in a way that felt both painful and familiar, like reopening a wound just to check if it still hurt. I sat up slowly, the room smelling faintly of dust and last evening's coffee. My thumb hovered over the screen. I almost laughed at how dramatic that moment felt, how something so small could pull so many memories out of hiding. I opened it. The message was short. Just a sentence. No apology. No explanation. Just a line that sounded like you had been carrying it around for a long time. I've been thinking about you. I read it again, and again. The words didn't change, but the weight of them did. They pressed against my ribs, against my throat. Outside, a stray dog barked, and somewhere far away a train horn cut through the night. Life was still moving, completely unaware that a single sentence had stopped me in my tracks. I remembered the first time we met, the way you had laughed too loudly at a joke that wasn't that funny. I remembered noticing the small scar near your eyebrow and wondering where it came from. You had caught me staring and raised an eyebrow, daring me to ask. I never did, and somehow that became one of the many things I loved about you, the unanswered questions. Back then, everything felt possible. We talked about the future as if it were a flexible thing, something we could bend around our plans. We promised honesty, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. I believed that promise with a kind of innocence that feels embarrassing now. The night we fell apart didn't start with a fight. It started with silence. You were sitting across from me, stirring your tea long after the sugar had dissolved. I kept waiting for you to say something, anything, but you didn't. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second stretching longer than the last. When you finally spoke, your voice sounded calm, which somehow made it worse. You said you felt stuck. You said you didn't know who you were anymore. You said you needed space. I nodded like I understood, like I was being mature about it, but inside something cracked. I wanted to scream that space was how people drifted away forever. I didn't scream. I let you go. After you left, I learned how loud an empty room could be. Your absence filled every corner. Your mug stayed on the shelf for weeks before I could bring myself to move it. I slept on my side of the bed, clinging to the edge as if the rest of it were dangerous territory. Friends told me time would help. They said all the right things, the things people say when they don't know what else to offer. I nodded and smiled and went home to the same quiet. Over time, the pain dulled, not because it disappeared, but because I got used to carrying it. It became part of me, like a scar I stopped noticing unless someone touched it. And then, months later, here you were. Thinking about me. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Every version sounded either too cold or too hopeful. I didn't want to give you the wrong idea, but I also didn't want to pretend I felt nothing. In the end, I sent something simple. I hope you're okay. The reply came almost immediately, like you had been holding your phone the whole time. Can we talk? My heart started racing. Talking meant hearing your voice, the way it dipped slightly when you were nervous. Talking meant opening doors I had spent months carefully closing. I stared at the screen, feeling the pull between who I was now and who I had been with you. We talked. Your voice sounded older somehow, rougher around the edges. You told me about the city you moved to, about the job that took more than it gave. You said you were lonely in a way you hadn't expected. I listened, my fingers tracing invisible patterns on the bedsheet. Then you paused, and I knew what was coming before you said it. I made a mistake, you said. I thought leaving would fix things, but it just showed me what I lost. The words settled between us, heavy and fragile. I wanted to ask why it took you so long to realize that. I wanted to ask why you didn't fight harder when it mattered. Instead, I closed my eyes and breathed. I've changed, I said quietly. I'm not the same person you left. You were silent for a moment. I imagined you nodding, looking down at the floor the way you used to when you were trying to be honest with yourself. I know, you said. I don't expect anything. I just couldn't keep pretending you didn't matter. After we hung up, The sun was starting to rise. Pale light crept through the curtains, revealing dust motes floating in the air. I felt drained and strangely calm, like something I had been carrying had finally been set down, even if only for a moment. Over the next few days, we talked more. Not constantly, not desperately. Just enough. You told me about the therapy you had started, about learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. I told you about the promotion I had earned, about how I learned to enjoy my own company. We were careful, respectful, like two people handling something fragile. One afternoon, you asked if we could meet. I didn't answer right away. I took a walk instead, letting the city noise wash over me. Cars honked. Vendors shouted. A child laughed somewhere nearby. Life was still happening, with or without us. When I finally replied, I surprised myself. Yes, I wrote. We met at a small cafe halfway between our old lives and our new ones. When I walked in and saw you, my breath caught. You looked familiar and different all at once. Your hair was shorter. There were faint lines near your eyes that hadn't been there before. You stood up awkwardly, unsure whether to hug me. I made the decision for both of us and stepped forward. The hug was brief but real. I felt your hands tremble slightly before you pulled away. We talked for hours, about the past, but not in the way people usually do when they're trying to rewrite it. We acknowledged what went wrong. You admitted your fear. I admitted my silence. There were moments when my eyes burned and moments when I laughed despite myself. At one point, you reached across the table and took my hand. The gesture felt both familiar and foreign. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. I'm not asking you to go back, you said. I just want the chance to show up differently. I looked at you, really looked at you, and realized something that surprised me. I wasn't afraid of losing you again. I was afraid of losing myself. I believe you've grown, I said. And so have I. But whatever happens next can't come from fear. It has to come from choice. You nodded, eyes shining. That's fair, you said. That's more than fair. When we left the cafe, the sky was streaked with orange and pink. We stood on the sidewalk, the moment stretching between us. You asked if you could see me again. I said yes, but not as a promise. As an opening. As I walked away, I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not because everything was suddenly fixed, but because the past no longer owned me. The message that arrived at 2:17 a.m. didn't break me. It showed me how much I had rebuilt. That night, I lay in bed listening to the fan, the same old sound, but it felt different. The ceiling looked the same. The room smelled the same, but I wasn't the same person staring up at it.